I had decent middle management at that NASA place. My boss was great, but it didn't matter how much she tried to shield us, because the top, him, he didn't want change. He was just crazy. He was a narcissistic asshole. It didn't
Okay.
matter, because you can only do so much with so much power. And that's where, people have to balance whether or not is this worth staying. And usually it's not in that case. But if they're willing and they're open-minded enough to like, yeah, we could make some changes around here, then okay, cool. Then you can do that management up so that you can strategically get a plan to change your culture, and then, go downward from there. But you can't go down from the middle if the top doesn't support you. It won't work. It's not sustainable. You might have like your little micro culture that you can try to do something with, but again, if that narcissistic whoever above you wants to dead everything you're doing, you have no power here. You have no power here. We made
What's
it.
going on, Brittany? It's great to meet you.
Dave, it's been a long time coming.
Tell me about yourself. You're like this culture veteran rock star.
So you are so much energy. I love it. I need it in my life. I worked in a lot of bad places. No, not really. Like Air Force wise, you know how it goes,
Oh,
military.
yeah.
Good and bad, had great ones. And you can always just see the productivity being amazing and people happy and their mental health is happy when the culture is good. And when it's shit, everything is shit. So
Boom.
I want to help be a part of more goodness.
Yes. That's awesome. Okay. So, like, if you're comfortable, right? So, whatever you're comfortable with, but I would love to hear, like, how did you even get to, like, even like childhood to Air Force to entrepreneur, work culture consultant?
I'm from a podunk town in Arizona,
Okay.
like, 1,500 people, something like that. Desert rat, river rat. And I, love the town I'm from, but also I needed to I didn't want more. So that's where the Air Force came into play. Everyone says that I grew up with it. All they remember all throughout school is that I was like, I'm going into the Air Force. And I don't even remember that, but they supposedly do. And went in, I graduated at 16, and it wasn't because I was smart, it's because I hated high school. I'm not, as much as I love people, I also hate them.
I love it.
So graduated 16, then as soon as I turned 17, my dad signed the waiver, and that's when I went into the Air Force.
Okay. All right. So, what was your relationship like with your folks? And did you have any siblings? And how was that relationship?
I'm an only child,
Okay.
but I am the one who got all the chores. I'm not necessarily the one who got all the spoiling. So there's two different types of only children. People must know that.
Right.
My mother passed of cancer at a very young age, so it was my dad who raised me, and we had a great relationship. He was a gearhead, so that's pretty much why I went into being a jet engine mechanic, because I used to wrench on trucks with my dad, so it kind of just was a good segue.
That's awesome. So what age? Because that's the exact same thing that happened to my wife. Her mom, first mom, passed away from cancer when she was 16 or 17.
Yeah, I was 4, so I was really young.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I
So
definitely.
so the rest of the time it was you and your pops.
Mhm.
Wow. And so your dad was he was a mechanic?
Well, just on the off side of things, like we were always in the off. If people on the West Coast know, like off-road racing, Baja 1000,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
trophy trucks and stuff. So like he was in
Wow.
the internet startup, like editing and reporting on that stuff and being in the trucks and all kinds of stuff like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so you knew from the jump like you're going in the Air Force from like a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, so then you were, and it's so funny because some of our homies here in the hood we live in,
Mm-hmm.
she was a F-16 engine mechanic, jet engine mechanic.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now she's this gangster homeschool mom. She's bad to the bone. But so did you enjoy being a Air Force mechanic?
Yeah, I learned a lot. It was most of my career. It was probably the first 5 years at least. And that it taught me the grit I needed, the tough skin I needed to deal, the blue collar life. And I think it was the best way to kind of start my career, in the blue collar life, because the tears, the sweat, the everything. And then after that, I cross-trained because I wanted to travel more. That's why I went into the military, and to get out of this tiny little ass town in Arizona.
Right.
And the best way to do that was to become air crew. And that's when I took that air crew route.
Okay. So now, and how long were you total in the Air Force?
8.
Wow. And it's so that's one of the neat benefits of being in the military, because you're right, like because we move around so much in the military and you're part of so many different teams and oh,
Mhm.
and you get there's constant influx, right? New folks in, folks out. And it's like the culture is almost constantly changing based on right chain of command and who's the new guy, that kind of thing. Okay,
Yeah.
so at what point did you make this decision like, okay, I've worked for some boneheads and in some chucklehead units, I don't want any more to do with this. I want to see if I can make a difference on the outside. Like, what was that? Explain that transition.
So when I got out, I actually I went right into government contracting as soon as I got out, because it's a good segue. It still keeps you close to your people, but you still have freedom. So I did that for a little bit and I was still on base. Then I went NASA contractor because I was like, ooh, it's the new space thing. That's super exciting. Let me get into that. And that is done when everything went to shit. And I was like, I went, it was a toxic place. And long story short, that when I quit that job after 7 months of being in that hellhole is when I realized what I want to do is what I'm doing now.
Ah, interesting. So what was it? Was it a bad boss? Was it a bad coworker? Was it a bad chain of command? Like, what was that experience like?
It was a smaller business, but the guy was a billionaire who owned it. So he wanted to be pretty much Elon Musk without being Elon Musk. Um, and he just was a very bad person. And it trickled from there. It was bad, man. my
Ah,
my boss was the VP, so I was right there with her, and that was his right hand, and he treated her like complete garbage, spitting, screaming in her face type crap. And then when because all of us were in cahoots of getting the hell out of there, you know like everyone was, well, that didn't have the corporate Stockholm syndrome at the time. And so when she quit that morning, he brought all of us into this meeting, a certain tier of people, and he looks at me and he's like, "You were military, weren't you?" And I was like, "Yes." But in my mind, I'm like, why the hell does that matter? But he was like, "Okay, you're gonna come work for me now." And I was like, ha, tee ha, no, we're not. But I didn't say that out loud. I was just like, "Yes, sir." But I knew as soon as I got out of that meeting, I was like, "Nope," packed my shit and left, because I was like, I can't. Like he thinks, and I was told this by his other leadership team, that he thinks military leadership is what he does, and it's the screaming, it's the "you will do this," like Iron Fist stuff. I'm like, no, sweetheart, that's actually not how it works. Not in the Air Force, at least.
right, right. Wow. So, okay, and you also mentioned if you can define that for the audience too. So, corporate Stockholm syndrome. Can you explain that?
Yeah, there are people specifically there that had been there so long, that they started to identify with their captor, if you will, even though he was so bad to people, even though he did so many bad things and changes to like ripping PTO away from people and just a lot of things that in Nevada you can get away with, but it's not good for business. Um, he would do to people, and when normal people like us would be like, "This is not okay, like this is crap, all of us were done." The rest of people were looking at us, these people that had the Stockholm syndrome, were like, we're looking at us like we're bad, like we don't have loyalty, and we're bad people. And these same people, this company is now out of business, go figure.
Yeah, right.
Same people went down with the ship, and they
Wow.
just were so loyal because and that's the thing, is like the vision of the business was great, like we were putting things on the ISS, and it sounded exciting, but everything in between was complete horse crap. But they didn't see that. They just saw they were blinded by their loyalty that didn't make any sense to anybody. It was an actual psychological situation with them.
And do you know, because that happens, I think, way more frequently than people even know or realize.
Mhm.
And I think there's maybe people listening on our podcast and also YouTube channel that are being impacted. But again, I was in a business cult for 20 years, and I was both. This is what's crazy about that whole deal is I was both the victim, but because of how we did in the company, I was also abuser, right? I was also I was on both ends, but again, because I had no self awareness, I was totally emotionally clueless.
Mhm.
I didn't even know what was going on. I didn't know I was I had no concept until I started getting healthy emotionally. I'm like, oh crap! Wait a second, this is not right, man. Like
Right.
we can't say that. Like, wait a second, that's crazy. What are we doing here, right? And but I didn't notice all that until I started to grow emotionally. What is that, Brittany? Like, why like now that I'm emotionally healthier,
Mhm.
like it doesn't make sense to me. Why on earth would I develop a loyalty to someone that is abusing me? Like, what's going on there? Do you
Well,
understand? Like,
I actually can speak to this because not to be all to bring it down because I'm just a realist, but I actually previously was in a marriage that was abusive.
mm,
So I can actually talk to this. And I had Stockholm syndrome to a point, with him because like, he was physically and emotionally abusive, but I would be like, oh, well, because I'm an empath. And I was like, I want to heal you. I want to help you. And that's kind of maybe where some of these people are at. Is like they see the vision. Like, my vision was to make this marriage work. Right. So like, I'm going to heal you. I'm going to help you. Everything's going to be fine. And so I would, you know, give him excuses if you essentially to, and that's what they would do as well. They would give the CEO excuses. Oh, he's just stressed. That's why he's screaming and spitting in your face. And I just saw the parallels after I got as well more emotionally intelligent, as seeing things from the outside looking in on the situation.
yeah, got it. Yeah, yeah, that's
There's a
good.
lot to
So
unpack there.
no, there's a truckload. There's a truckload because I'm an empath also, and because there's still people even after we bounce. There's still a lot of people that like smart people, like smarter than me people. I was infantry, so I'm not like I didn't ever work at NASA, right? You know what I'm saying? So, but like smart people, and I'm like, dude, you realize like they're controlling you, they're manipulating you, they're controlling so many decisions in your life, and yeah, maybe it's the empathy, like, oh no, maybe it's like, well, they mean well, or but it's just they just don't know how to treat people, but I know they mean well. I don't know. And then another dynamic too that I have seen is like in the real toxic culture I was in, they serve the crap out of you. Right? So, oh, Brittany, let me help you with this. Let me help you with that. Let's help work on your finances. Let's help with your relationships. Let's help with your business stuff. Right? So now they've got their fingers in every aspect of your life. And now it's like emotionally you almost feel obligated to be loyal to me because, but Brittany, look how much I've helped you, girl. Look how much I've served you. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, and there was a lot of that with that CEO. He would like buy pizzas every other day. Like he would buy meals. First of all, they were disgusting. Like, thanks, but no thanks. This is not healthy anyway. But like he would do that and be like, "Well, I do this for you," and all of us, like the majority of us, like we don't want that shit. We'd rather you treat us like human beings, not children, than you buy us garbage ass pizza, bro.
Right.
That there, and it was always like, well, I do this for you, and like it was, I sign these checks. Congratulations, that's how business works. Don't feel special.
Right. Right. That's right. Okay. How did you? Because here's another interesting, fascinating part about this whole Stockholm syndrome thing. How long did you work there?
7 months only.
Okay. So it took you. So I feel so embarrassed. So it took you 7 months to be like, screw you, bro. I'm out. It took me 20 years, girl. 20 years of me being completely clueless. The clue bus drove by and I was just waved, you know what I'm saying? As it drove on by, like And for you, so why did it take you 7 months? Like, what determines how long someone stays in that enmeshment from that toxic leader?
I mean, better late than never, first of all. So,
Yeah.
hey, congratulations on the fact that you figured it out, period. I knew actually way before those 7 months that I had made a bad mistake.
Okay.
But hashtag too late, I have mouths to feed, so
Right.
find, do this and find something in the meantime, or maybe think
Okay.
better. Um, that's when I learned. So long story short, it was only like 2 weeks in, and we got slapped with this non-compete. Sign it or you're getting fired. What? And it wasn't even legally binding. It was complete trash. It didn't mean anything anyway. But this is your first 2 weeks. And oh, by the way, in the first month, we're taking away all of your PTO, because in Nevada, you can do that. Oh, that's bait and switch, ladies and gentlemen, but a billionaire
Oh.
will play you into the ground with his money, so you're not going to win anyway. So
Mm.
it was just a nightmare all around. So I knew within the first, like, probably a month is when I knew, like, this is bad, man. I should have listened to the Glassdoor reviews, but all those stories seemed way too freaking crazy to be true. No, they are all true.
Wow.
Sadly.
Okay. So it took you, I mean, that's great. It only took you a month to kind of like, okay, no, this is not right. But then another 6 months before you kind of took action.
Yeah, it was
Um,
like, so the first month was like, oh yeah, I made a mistake. And then after that, I went into my own version of, maybe I can do something to make this better. And that is the business lesson I learned early, like now that I implement into my business and with my clients now. Like, you can only do so much, and it doesn't negate that you're a good leader, a bad leader, whatever. Like, there's only so much you can do when the top doesn't want to help you or your culture.
yeah, yeah. And I want to go back real quick too, and I want to just say I'm sorry I missed my initial opportunity. I'm sorry that you went through an abusive relationship.
Oh, it happens. It's okay. Thank you.
Well, that's terrible. I mean, that is terrible. So again, I'm so sorry that you had that experience. But I'm thankful that obviously you're in a different place, and now you
Yeah.
can probably be in a lot healthier relationships now and have those boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and can sniff in 5 minutes, not a month. Like, okay, whoa, bro, pump the brakes. This is not how we do
Red
stuff.
flags. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, what can someone do who is not a top level leader, but maybe a mid level leader to impact the culture
Mhm.
of an unhealthy organization?
So the first thing is they got to figure out whether or not they even have the ability and the permission to manage up. So they have to see whether or not the top is willing and wanting of change, because that's where you're going to figure out whether or not, like, this is even worth staying at this place. That's like your first thing, because no matter how, so I had decent middle management at that NASA place. My boss was great, but it didn't matter how much she tried to shield us, because he didn't want change. He was just crazy. He was a narcissistic asshole. It didn't
Okay.
matter, because you can only do so much with so much power. And that's where, people have to balance whether or not is this worth staying. And usually it's not in that case. But if they're willing and they're open-minded enough to, like, yeah, we could make some changes around here, then okay, cool. Then you can do that management up so that you can strategically get a plan to change your culture, and then, go downward from there. But you can't go down from the middle if the top doesn't support you. It won't work. It's not sustainable. You might have like your little micro culture that you can try to do something with, but again, if that narcissistic whoever above you wants to dead everything you're doing, you have no power here. You have no power here.
Yeah, right. Well, and so even that thing that you said, where being able to assess, does that senior leader even want change? For me, I don't, like, the majority of people that I've worked with. I do executive coaching, and there's a lot of senior leaders that are not super self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
They don't realize. So most of the leaders that I have worked with, if you ask me, hey Noble, how's your culture? Oh, hey Brittany, my culture's gangster, man. I'm legit. What are you talking about? I'm the man, right? I'm a great leader. And everyone else is like, oh crap, man, this guy doesn't know what's going on, right? So that's in fact, there's a great book I've got back here on my shelf. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception. A retired SAR major, he was an EOD SAR major, gave it to me. And there was a case study. They gave 10,000 senior executives a questionnaire, survey, whatever, and said, rate yourself where you fit among the other 10,000 executives. 90% of them put themselves in the top 5%. Well, that math doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? 90% of you can't be in the top 5%, right?
Which one is it?
But that's their whole point of this book, is like, we as leaders can think that we're better than we really are, right? Because from the EQ standpoint, you know, self-awareness is a big part of emotional intelligence, and a lot of leaders are not very self-aware. And I mean, in the military, man, we saw that a lot too, right? There's just not a lot of leaders. It's when you have structures that are solely based on rank, title, and position. Well, listen, Brittany, you got to do this because I'm a colonel and you're a first sergeant, so you have to do what I tell you to do. Okay, but you're a bonehead, Noble. Like, no, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, people rely on, I think that's a crutch for so many people, is their rank or title. How, as a culture guru, what are some systems or processes that you have seen be effective in changing or influencing the culture of an organization?
A lot of people will roll their eyes at this, but getting a pulse of your people is important. And a lot of employees surveys are shit. But the reason that they are is because they're poor questions. And the other thing is that a lot of times there's not a third party asking or getting the answers. Like, that's what I do. I'm the third party. I'm someone on the outside in, and I regurgitate to the senior leadership the things, so that they don't see any of the words or how it was written or whatever, so that the people, because there's only normally 30-40% of people who will actually do a survey. And, if you get it to the point where people can really have an amnesty hour and, lay into your shit, they'll do it, but they're only going to do it if they feel safe.
Boom, 100%. So what are some great questions to ask and assess whether or not I've got a good culture or a healthy culture or not?
Asking things about psychological safety. Do they feel psychologically safe? And not just asking that. Some people don't know what that is. Even explaining that, giving kind of like a recap of what that even is. Sometimes because I'm all about onboarding and the foundation of bringing someone on. So how did we get you? How do we keep you? Because
love it.
You're hearing it from the horse's mouth. And then you can use that for your own marketing purposes, culture, whatever. Use that to your advantage, or, make things better, make some good changes. And straight up asking, I'm all about integrity and transparency as part of my business values, and asking those, and my personality is just get to the freaking point. And it's just is your supervisor good at leading or not? Do they need training? Because sometimes that's where we really need to get down in the nitty gritty. Is the leadership teams that we have, do they need to be better? Because usually people don't necessarily leave because of company. They leave because they have a shit boss.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And when you look at those surveys, and so since you're the third party, which I agree, right? Because if it's not anonymous, right, and I'm supposed to rate you, you're supposed to rate me. If you're in my chain of command or I'm in your chain of command, if it's a high bureaucratic organization, there's no way on earth that they're going to give me the straight answer. There's no way, right?
Don't even have in a survey at all if you're not going to do that, because you're just going to get bullshit answers from people. People are just going to be like, okay, cool, great, awesome. I don't even want to be doing this. Yes, please. I need to do other shit today.
That's right. And then I'm going to get the results back. I'm like, oh, hey, Brittany, see, look what a great leader I am. Right? It's like, well, no, McFly, it's because your system is all jacked up.
Right.
Okay, so when you when you get those responses as a third party who goes in and checks out companies' cultures, what kind of what are you looking for as the SME, right? As a subject matter expert, what are there any red flags or yellow flags or even green flags that okay, these are signs of healthy cultures, these are signs of unhealthy cultures. What are you looking for as the SME?
Common denominators, like, are people complaining more about people, or are they just not happy maybe with benefits, or like, more tangible things, because I've seen surveys before with companies that, like, people were mostly happy with the workplace and the culture was good, but people are starting to get this angst and frustration because the benefits are crap and they could go somewhere else, and they're willing to possibly, screw your retainment up and go elsewhere because, like, yeah, you might have good culture, that's great, but your culture can get tainted by the fact that you're not bringing in the other things that people need as well. So, like, culture, um, in that sense can get tainted, because if you're not paying at market value, I mean, do you value your people? And that's going to start weighing on how people feel about you, about your company, and everything else.
Yeah, that's
So,
great. Have you seen a scenario where the onboarding process is legit, but they're onboarding into an unhealthy culture?
not yet, but usually it kind of goes hand in hand. With like bad onboarding, you're probably going to get a bad culture, well, 9 times out of 10. But I know, I'm for a fact, I'm sure that's the case, that yeah, they might have good onboarding, but as soon as they get on board, and it depends, these certain silos. Maybe the company is great and their macro culture is great, but they got the unlucky little silo of being under some dictator.
Right, sure. Yep. That's great. I've seen that for sure too. What are some trends you've seen in terms of causes of unhealthy cultures?
When leadership knows that there's a person, like a high productive person, but is bad for the team, and they keep them anyway. That's
Hmm.
that's the case a lot of times. Like, that person, then, well, but they do this and they do that and this and that. It's like, I've seen that song and dance 1,000 times. Um, and it's just like, this person isn't good. Give someone else the opportunity to be that productive person, because retainment's going to go out the window because people don't want to work with that person or for that person. It's not worth, is the juice really worth the squeeze? Probably not. Not in the long
That's
run.
yeah, that's great. That's great. That scenario was the exact scenario kind of that I had an experience with where the super hardcore narcissist, very toxic leader,
Mhm.
um, was a rock star,
Mhm.
crushing business. And
Yeah.
it's almost like, man, this is great. It's almost like results can blind or sway
Mhm.
those other leaders, like, because the only metric is like, oh, but look at their results, like, no, but you can't argue with their results, whatever. And yeah, if you're just looking at results, you're right, okay, they're a rock star,
But
but
they're
dude, how is that impacting everybody else in the organization?
right. It's that whole, do things see like this, a little XY, whatever. And it's like, okay, performance, and then your business values, and teamwork, and this is that. Like, where do they lie there? Because if it's all over here, then most likely, those other, the word for the objectives there, like, they're not filling in all these other things in which we need. Like, yes, they're a high performer, but are they good for the business, like psychological safety, everyone else? Probably not, because they're so focused on this, they negate all the goodness in which we need in terms of, like, teamwork. Like, are they a good person? Do they come up to work every day, and, like, are they helpful? Are they a piece of crap? There's just things that are, there's doesn't need to be a science to this. Are they a good person or are they not? And if they give you business results but they're crap, well, maybe they just need to be in their own. If you can find a way to make it so no one else works with them, fine. If you can find some magical place like that, but that's usually not the case. So you need either, and I don't go straight to firing them. I go, look, let's try to remedy them. Maybe they need some self-awareness, and we can teach them, emotional intelligence, some executive coaching or whatever coaching, and maybe try to mold them into being a better employee overall, so we don't lose all that or whatever. So try that. If that doesn't work, then get gone.
Yeah, that's great. Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad guy. I love one of the things that he said is hire slowly, fire quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Hire slowly, fire quickly, right? So that if you put the emphasis on the onboarding process and really make sure that's the right hire, then once at some point in their journey, right, you discover, okay, no, this guy has multiple points of underperformance or subpar performance, and in this case, it could be maybe their results are great, but they're negatively impacting the rest of the organization. Fire quickly, right? But okay,
And I guess that's where I have a hard time. And I've heard that scenario before, and I'm not necessarily against it, because in some cases people do just need to be gone.
yeah,
But there are cases I feel like firing fast, and I used to be the opposite, like, now just get rid of them. And now I'm trying to be more, emotionally intelligent. Like maybe they're neurodivergent, have a really hard time with stuff like this, ADHD, Asperger's, things like that. We don't know. Maybe they weren't even diagnosed and they just aren't good with people. Maybe we can help them, and everyone wins,
right. No, love it. And then a John Maxwell quote, he says, train them or trade them, which I love that, right? Because,
Mhm.
hey, is this person teachable?
Mhm.
Okay, well, if you discover that they're not teachable, okay, then they need to bounce. But if
Mhm.
they are teachable, because like you said, if they're EQ, right, if they're self-awareness, like, oh man, I had no idea I was doing this.
Mhm.
And I would be the perfect example, right? Because I had no idea I was being, using all these control and manipulation tactics as part of this culture that I was a part of. If someone, would have been able to coach me and say, Noble, let's break this down, bro. Oh crap! Like, man, I had no idea I was doing this. Right? Once I discovered it, like I not only bounced myself, but I called up a lot of people and apologized for all the people that I was, controlling and manipulating and stuff. Because I was like, man, and I said, look, I feel terrible that I did this to you, and I'm so sorry. But there's a lot of people I had to call up. How many leaders in your experience have you found are teachable versus not teachable?
Thankfully, with my clients, they already start off as good people that just need, to have enough self-awareness to know they needed growth. So in that sense, clientele wise, I've had good, more good than bad when it comes to just like experiences, like with me working for people who were not open to, because they already thought that they were at their best, that's already when it's gone to hell. But hey, good on you though, for like, again, like having that self-awareness and like going back and even apologizing, that's huge. And like, I'm with you, like I'm not perfect. Like when I was in that toxic work environment, I'm into the hippie astrology thing. I have very powerful emotions, and thusly I attributed to that toxic work environment, because when things are toxic, and I was getting toxic because I had no power in providing a positive outcome, I was turning toxic as hell. And I, didn't really see it until I was done and finally free, that, oh my God, I was so toxic, because I was so like hateful and resentful towards everything, and everything I did, I was just like, nothing matters. I'm nihilist at this point. F everything, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that's the consequence. That's the second and third order effects of a toxic leader. Is it rolls downhill, right? Is when you've got a narcissistic leader, it can really, again, talking about culture, right? It can change the environment. The it can change the environment because it can change the individual environment, right? Because if I mean, same deal happened to me, right? I got bitter and I got negative, and I'm like, man, this like, why can't you guys see this, right? All of my fellow Stockholm syndrome people, like, I finally saw it, but they're all like, Noble, you're not, like you said, you're not loyal, and I can't believe that you're not, you don't dig this guy or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And so, and so it does, even though you've got a performer, so let's say who's, excuse me, at 100% performance and they got these great results, if they're negative and toxic, it can drop everyone else's performance.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the cost, right? What's the opportunity cost of that? Okay, great, that's one person operating 100%, But if this guy was gone, now you could raise up everyone else's percentage from 80 to, now you got 10 people operating at 100% versus one clown.
Right. It's
You know
like
what I'm
that
saying?
20 rule. In that
Yes.
case, like you might have 20% that are pulling in the most sales or whatever, but imagine what it would be like if 80% of them were like that.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. What has been the hardest thing emotionally for you about a toxic culture?
How it messes with people's mental health, because it sure did mine. When I was in that abusive marriage before, when I was in the military, I was on antidepressants or anxiety medication, whatever it is. But once I got out of the military, I wanted to do the hippie thing and get off all that stuff and be holistic. But when I was in that place, it was making me contemplate getting back on Valium. And that's how I knew that things were spiraling out of control. I'm a pretty resilient person. I feel like for the most part, I can handle my emotions, but that place was just getting me to my limit of how bad they were treating people, and there was nothing I could do about it. Yeah, it was just hard seeing everyone's mental health just plummeting and having no ability to help.
For sure. Yeah. How have you, because this is another thing that is an aspect, in my opinion, of EQ, but also of culture. How can you grow the resilience within a culture?
That's a great question. Leadership has to be open to wanting to hear things they don't want the answer to. They have questions, but they don't necessarily. We always want to hear the answers to the questions. There a lot of people are assholes. They want to hear the answer they want to hear, not what they truly need to hear. Opening up an environment that lets people come to you with solutions, upgrades, things like that. Just a good environment, an environment that has positive communication, I think will help with resiliency, because maybe when times are tough, people have the trust factor, right? They're going to be more willing to be like, yo, we need to chill out because our people are getting burnt out, so it's like having the trust so that you can have the transparency to have the resiliency.
Yeah, got it. Got it. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think communication, yeah, is a big one. What steps have you found? Are there certain steps that if a company did, these three things, and I'm whatever the number is, right? Maybe it's two things, maybe it's five things, maybe it's one thing, 10 things. If a company did X number of things, it will begin to improve the health and culture of that organization.
It's hard to say there's a cookie cutter answer, because with all my clients, it has been different, which almost proves to me there is no one answer, because they might be in different growth stages. They might have more of their shit together here versus this company has more of it together here. But it all comes back down to, do you have your mission, vision, and values locked down? That has to be your foundation first, because without those, you can't. So if you don't have a standard, you have nothing to hold people accountable to. Those are your standards. And what you take that for people's evaluations, everything reverts back to this. It's like what would Jesus do? And whether someone's
Right,
religious or not, but it's
right.
like, what would this company do? Mission, vision, values, especially, are you aligning with these things? And even with business, on the strategic level of things, does this align with our business trajectory? Go back to those things. So that's number one. And then onboarding is a huge thing for me, because it's day zero. It's not even the day they literally onboard. It's how you're reaching out to people, your marketing, your branding, everything like that is huge. And leadership, it's if you're not training your people, how you're just throwing them to the wolves without training. In the military, we're pretty good about that, having NCO training and this and that. The civilian side is terrible at this. You just expect people to be good at managing people now because you gave them this new title. Hello, they need freaking training on how to do that efficiently, because they might be able to manage a process well, especially in the tech world, but it doesn't mean they're good at peopling.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And I think, man, I think that's part of, well, I don't know if, in my opinion, a good leader is always learning, right? That our professional development and personal development should be should be like brushing our teeth kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like something that is a daily thing. So let me ask you that question, Brittany. What would you say is like how are you developing yourself just to make sure that you're growing and emotionally healthy and all that stuff?
I know that there is a plethora of things for me to learn. So that's like the first thing is I know I don't know everything and I never will. Sorry. I'm part of a masterminds group, not a pod, just a self-accountability group that's really awesome in this entrepreneurial space. That's been huge for me. I love them. Sorry. And
It's all
then
right.
I've had a coughing fit all week, and here we go. And then I have a lot of people in my life. I'm all about like a tribe, a good tribe, people who would aspire me to be better. And I look up to them, like my other half. He's an amazing leader, and I take a lot from him. And that's kind of sometimes hard when you're in a relationship and you don't normally like to hear, take advice from them. But this person has proven to me for a long time that like how people just gravitate towards him and things like that. So I love to learn from other people, their experiences, active listening, if you will, and taking tidbits from other people and trying to be better in that way.
Okay, so you hit on some great stuff. How have you put your tribe together?
We did a lot of out,
Okay.
a lot of people out
Yeah.
that weren't, and a lot of people hear like, is this serving me? And it's not necessarily that, is it literally serving me, but are these people bringing more positive than negative into my life? Are they energy vampires? So, really sitting there and thinking about, I have literal best friends at the time that you're done. And it's not for everybody. That's just who I am as a person. There's people that, I would say from emotional intelligence standpoint, I've learned a lesson from that like, if you are going to cut people out of your life, give them a reason why. It's fair to them, and I wish I had done better in some of those moments. So, learn from my lessons. But there's a way to get people out of your life for you to grow, because that whole thing, I think Snoop Dogg recently said it, like, in order to grow, you can't come down to meet these people. You got to keep going up. And if they don't want to meet you, then, here's your sign.
Right, that's right. Yeah, because the whole concept of a tribe is so important. It's very important for emotional health and mental health and stuff. And so I think I love kind of learning what some how people kind of assemble or put their tribes together, because some people are intentional about it and some people are not intentional about it. And I think it's really important to I think a lot of people's lives would change if they did what you did and were intentional about who's in my life. One of the things I call is a relationship audit. Like, even once a year, do a relationship audit. Okay,
Yeah. Smart.
who are all the people in my life,
Mhm.
and how do I add value to them, right? Because I don't want it one sided. I don't
Yep.
want to be just a taker. I want to be a giver as well, right? It's got to be both
Yeah.
ways. How am I adding value to them is one column, but the other column is like, how are they adding value to me? What's the relationship there? And am I connected to somebody for an emotionally unhealthy reason, right? Is it, oh, well, I'm looking for Brittany's validation and approval. That's why I have her in my life. Okay, well, that's not,
Mhm.
in my opinion, that's not an emotionally healthy reason to have someone in your life. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um,
That can turn toxic, probably.
yeah, that's exactly right. Well, and here, let me tell you, because again, I've got this T-shirt too. Is it turns into, now I'm emotionally codependent on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Codependency. Oof. That's a whole nother bag in itself.
Whole nother, and I'm telling you, I've got
Got you.
I've got that T-shirt
Been
too.
there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I was emotionally codependent for 2 decades, and it's, man, it's brutal. It took me 3 years to detox from this very emotionally unhealthy relationships, of very intentional detox, and and that's another thing too, is I don't know the people. So you bounce from that real toxic billionaire guy.
Mhm.
There are a lot of people who don't spend time healing from and processing that toxic environment, and they can carry that crap into the next, right? Am I right? Am I
Bingo.
right?
Bango. Bongo.
So, right, tell me, explain that for me, expound on that for me.
And I know a lot of people like probably make fun of me because I always bring stuff back to relationships, but business and relationships are relationships, right? And so you get out of a bad relationship. First of all, no one is perfect. Everyone has crap. So even in that marriage I was in, I had my shit I needed to be better at. So you have to, after that, reflect like, what could I have done better so that when I get into my next relationship, I'm not bringing my same crap into that one so that I could have a better relationship. So same thing with like when you get out of a toxic work environment, like I had to learn, I had time, I had like 6 months I actually took off. Like I'm not going to rush into something and get into another crap storm. And that's when I kind of, in that 6 months, made work culture consultant as a business. But I had the time to reflect to be like, what did I do wrong there? And I realized I've turned toxic. Like I should have been better in XYZ ways. I didn't have to, bitch every 5 seconds about things and stuff like that. I was attributing to the toxicity and that was my fault. And I wanted to say, and I reached out to certain people too, like, yo, I'm sorry. Like I made shit worse for us and I didn't have to do that. And so like I do agree with you so much that you just have to take that time to have the self-awareness of what did I do or what could I have done better. And like people have to be emotionally intelligent enough and self-aware enough to have an ego death, and that's a whole nother ball of wax, to be like, what, not having a victim mentality.
Love it. Love it. That's great. I dig it like a shovel. That's awesome. That's awesome, Brittany. Okay. So great skinny. You shared a bunch of great skinny, Brittany. What is one question that I haven't asked about culture that you would like me to ask?
Oh boy. Why do you think people get so offended when they can't make change? Like all these people that argue with me, like on LinkedIn or whatever, they get so offended, like, yes, you can make change from the middle. Why do you think, and it's kind of like a rhetorical because there's various answers to this, but what do you think it is? Why do they get so offended when they can't swallow that answer that you might not have the power to change your culture? Like,
That's for you or that's for me?
yeah.
That's for me. Okay, so no, for me, so offense. Okay, just my 2 cents here. Offense comes from EQ, someone's EQ, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you may say the sky is blue, and I could agree with you, or I could disagree with you,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, maybe it's purple right now, whatever, right? Offense is a choice. I can choose to be offended. You may say, "Well, I hate dudes that are bald and have a beard," and I'm not, and I could, oh man, that's like I could take that personally
Mm-hmm.
and somehow think that that impacts my value or is an attack on my value, or I could be like, "Hey, that's cool," right? Like
Yeah.
that, that's great. That's your perspective. That's your
Mm-hmm.
opinion, and
Your
and
problem.
that and that's true for you, right? That is true for you. That's a real feeling. I hate bald dudes with beards. Okay, cool. Like that's and so I can also like, okay, well that she didn't say she doesn't like me.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you did, oh man, I hate Noble. Like I actually legit hate Noble. That's also I'm totally cool with that right now. But I
Impossible.
awesome, awesome. I got a new homie. Woo! That's what I'm talking about. Right. But when I was a people pleaser addict, right, it would have crushed me if Brittany said, "Oh, I hate bald guys and with beards." Oh my, like it, I'd be done. I'd be done. Right.
Same.
Because I did get my approval and validation from everyone else around me. Right. Which is a brutal way to live. So back to your thing, offense is a choice, and even how we disagree with each other, right? Because this is my 2 cents from my little foxhole of EQ.
Mm-hmm.
The emotional intelligence of our nation sucks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Preach.
Right? You know what I'm saying? Can I get a witness? Right? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Mm.
Right? And you can tell, like when people, even how people disagree.
Oh yeah.
Right? I can disagree with you. Okay, well, hey, Brittany, I don't think culture is a big deal. And I can do it without saying, "Oh, well, Brittany, you suck, and you're a waste of oxygen." Like,
Right.
bro, like, wait a second, why are we?
0 to 1,000. Why so quick?
You know what I'm saying? Right. But again, that used to be me. Because I had no EQ, I had no emotional intelligence. I would go from 0 to Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, in 0.7 seconds. There was no processing. I would go from, and it could have been, it would literally, you could say, Noble, I don't like baby puppies, right? And I would throat punch you. And you'll be like, dude, I just said I didn't like puppies. Like, why are you like body slamming me right now? Like, bro, chill, right? I had no chill, zero chill. And I think it's because so many, like, this is the other thing I got. How many people have ever been trained on how to identify, process, and manage their emotions?
Barely anybody.
You know what I'm talking about? And so we wonder why there's all this dysfunction going on in the world, in the workplace. It's because we got a bunch of emotionally dysfunctional people walking around, and you know what I'm saying? So anyway, that's my 2 cents. That's why I think, we get, as I mean, you're much bigger influencer than I am.
Oh, stop. I am not.
No, girl, man, your LinkedIn is fire, right? And so you get your influence, and I love how you roll, right? Because this is my 2 cents, and this is how, and it's like it's provocative stuff about culture, and I dig that, right? Because it elicits a response, and it reveals this is what I love, is it reveals people's EQ or lack thereof.
You know me. And that's what people don't get about my content is like, and then like, you're just doing this to incite a riot, pretty much.
That's right. But that's what I love, is because it reveals, like, you can tell immediately from how people respond, like, no EQ, no EQ, a little bit of EQ. You can tell. I mean, you can easily chart it, predict it. Okay. So last question here, Brittany. How do we follow you? How do we find your content? All that stuff.
Biggest way to find me is on LinkedIn, Brittinay, Brittinay, Lenhart, close to Lionheart, which makes sense. And that's my biggest content platform. Instagram, again, everything about me is work culture consultant. And whether it's .com, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, or even on Spotify. So that's where you can find me. Thank you.
Love it. Okay, and okay, I said that was last question. Here's the last question. What is your superpower? What is your superpower? What are your strengths?
Intuition, I think, is a innate blessing. But it's just like maturity. It has grown over the years because I've been able to listen to it better, which has helped me in relationships, business, and or otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. That's great. Man, intuition, that's really good. Can you grow that? Is that something you can grow and develop, or you got it or you don't got it?
I feel like some people have it more than others. It's like, and that's more on my hippie thing. I think some people are just, that you might be more blessed with those powers, if you will. But I feel like even if you are, it's just like leadership traits. You can be, innately born with leadership traits, but you can become better. You can be a better leader. And I think that's the same with intuition. You can have it, but if you don't know how to hone it, then it can be for naught. So going out of your way to try to be better at it, listen to it, understand those gut feelings and what it's really trying to tell you.
That's great. Well, and I think it takes self-awareness, right?
Yes.
It takes self-awareness to listen to yourself, right?
Physically and emotionally.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Awesome, Brittany, you rock, girl. This was amazing.
Thank you. This is one of my favorite podcasts ever. I freaking love it. You're
Thank you so much. I totally appreciate it. And I'll let you know when it comes out. Thank you again for your time, Brittany. So glad we were able to finally connect.
Same. Thanks, man. I don't know if this is the wrap or whatever, but again, thank you for working with me and everything. And I loved this so much. I can't wait to, share it as well on my side of things so people can follow you. I love emotional intelligence. So I'm a huge Mafia fan.
What? Awesome. That's great.